get ready for the action. Good evening, race fans, and welcome to our Monday night excursion through the world of motorsports here on Motorsports Madness on Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. We have got a lot to talk about and a lot of people to cover it with here tonight, but I'm Jacob Seelman, the voice of Speed77, alongside my colleague Tom Baker and the rest of our motorsports insiders here at tonight's round table. And I guess I'll start with you, Tom. Certainly a lot of things happening over this weekend in motorsports, but a lot of things happening that we may, or at least I, expected. I mean, hey, I scored a point over the weekend. Brad Keselowski won the Cup race.
Well, yeah, Brad did indeed win a Cup race, and even though I was temporarily insane on Monday night and failed to pick him, or maybe I just did it to disagree with you, I'm not sure. But I did correct my error on Tuesday and Thursday, and I really thought that Brad had the momentum going in. It just, we talk all the time about momentum on these shows, and the Penske Racing organization as a whole is performing at such a peak level right now. And, I think Brad really has established himself as the driver that this chase is going to have to go through. And we all know what happened the last time he was sitting in a position like this after race one of the chase. He became the champ. So this is going to be an interesting deal down the road. But Brad's got a leg up on everybody right now, and he's pretty confident going into the next couple of races, I'm sure.
Oh, I think confidence is at an all-time high, but the thing that I got out of Brad during his post-race interview and even in the comments he's made earlier today was that he was actually surprised by the fact that team won in Chicagoland on Sunday. He didn't expect it, and yet they were able to pull it off. James Pike, I think that says a lot about what Keselowski and his team are capable of through this chase. But talking about capable drivers, we about had one crash the party in the form of Kyle Larson, who, if it weren't for that late race caution, I think probably would have won that race.
I remember talking about Kyle Larson's move to Ganassi last year when it was first announced. And I remember you asked a question as to whether or not the roundtable thought that he was actually ready for the Sprint Cup Series. And I believe I was about the only one that said that it might be the right time for him to move. I would like to think, given the performance that he's had this year, and especially on Sunday, that he has vindicated himself as ready for the big time and will be a threat, I would say, in multiple races in the chase to win. And certainly next year you have to look at him at least making a decent run of it in the chase. I think it is the beginning of a very, very bright career for the, what do we call them, the California Ninjas, Jacob?
The Cal Ninja, that is absolutely right. And, James, I do remember back to that, and I would say you have some sense of vindication as well, because I think most of us thought you were slightly crazy at that particular roundtable discussion. But I'll be the first to admit that I thought Larson was going to win that race, and like I said, if it weren't for the late race caution, I think he most likely would have. Kyle Magda, I want to get you in on this because we've talked about the Dominator, we've talked about the guy who almost spoiled the party, so let's talk about some of the guys who are hurting a little bit after what could have been or what just wasn't on Sunday afternoon. And one of the guys that you and I have been discussing over the last couple hours here getting ready for this show is one Eric Almirola, because I had circled Eric as one of the guys that I thought could crash the party and go a long way in this chase. And he was off to a pretty brilliant start, running 6th, 5th, trying to challenge for 4th at a couple points during that race. And yet the engine blew with 30 to go, and here we are talking about Eric Almirola now being in the situation that a lot of people thought he was going to be in to begin with. The only way he gets through to advance, I believe, is by sneaking out a win at one of these next two races.
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me tonight. And, yeah, for Eric Almirola, and if you remember, early in that race, he was a lap down, so he had to fight his way back to get up to where he was before the engine blew. So, and there were so many issues for chase drivers. I think most of the chase drivers had a problem at some point. Like Brad Keselowski had the loose wheel. Same thing with Kevin Harvick had a slow pit stop. And and there was just so much going on. And Kyle Busch slid through his pit box during one point in the race, and that really cost him. Kurt Busch, Matt Kenseth both spun coming on a pit road, and they lost valuable time. And Casey Kane had other issues as well. He had 2 speeding penalties on the day. So it was a very eventful day for the Chase drivers. I think the only guy who didn't have an issue was Jeff Gordon. He finished second, of course. So really, as you could see, that there was just so much going on in that race. And then, of course, the move of the race when Brad Keselowski thread the needle and went 3 wide between Kyle Larson and Kevin Harvick, that pretty much sealed it for him. So, I mean, and also, for his teammate at Penske, Joey Logano, I mean, he had a wrapper on the end of on his grill for the last several laps. That car was flying, but they caught a huge break with that car blowing up right after he crossed the checkered flag. So, yeah, that just a lot. There was a lot in yesterday's race. And also, of course, Ryan Newman. Actually, Ryan Newman was 3 laps down the race as well. So there's just so much to talk about with all the struggles that the Chase drivers had, but of course with Brad Keselowski coming on top.
Yeah, and Tom, what was that you and I talked about during last Monday night's show, that it was going to take 10 races, even if you won a race right off to advance, that you and I thought it was basically going to take 10 races of being absolutely perfect to come out on top in this title fight. And we saw some guys, like Kyle just mentioned, get really, really, really lucky this weekend. He mentioned Joey Logano. That happens, and there's 2 or 3 more laps to go in this race. We're talking about Logano being one of the drivers that's buried in the chase and needing to win to advance as opposed to a 4th-place finish. He got really lucky with where that engine expired. And, a couple of these guys rallying back. Like Kyle said as well, Kurt Busch, it's all about where you are when it counts. And those were 2 of the guys that stuck out in my mind as having the luck they needed to stay right in this on Sunday.
Well, and I think what we talked about last Monday wasn't perfection. It was just, I think we were talking about it from the perspective of having to be on your A game, and you couldn't afford mistakes, and perfect's not for real. You only get 1 or 2 perfect races a year if you're lucky. The rest of the time you do have to battle back from adversity, and you have to have some luck. And so for the guys like Joey Logano, for example, who obviously got very lucky, it's just all about being in the right place at the right time, but you have to be on your A game in order to accomplish that. I think we could say that Brad Keselowski got lucky as well, throughout the whole scope of that race and being able to come out on top. And then when he saw the opportunity, he made just an unbelievable move. I mean, you just have to, you have to be on your game at all times. And I think, again, Keselowski now has won a Chase race. So now he goes into the next couple of races knowing that he's likely to advance into the next. I mean, he's pretty much through to the next round. So he can now go into the next couple of races in this round basically and just focus on winning again. He doesn't so much have to be so perfect and so conservative, and, you can kind of get a little crazy, and Brad's dangerous when he's crazy. So, I mean, I think when you give him an opportunity like this, where you win a race right off the bat, you pretty much know you're going to round 2. That's going to be a big advantage for him going forward. While the rest of the guys are still trying to get the win, he's got it, and he can race a little bit more loose and relaxed than maybe some of the other guys can. I think that's going to be a big advantage for him going forward. And if he ever gets a second win in this round, which is entirely possible, boy, he's going to be awfully hard to stop.
Yeah, and see, that's going to be what's really, really interesting. Oh boy, there's so many different ways that I expected this to play out, and I'll be honest, though I picked him, I didn't expect Brad to just really take it to everybody the way he did. And it's going to be interesting to see. You're right, Tom. And James, I want to get you in on this, too, because I didn't pick Keselowski to win the championship. But I have to say, right now, I can't help but sit here and start second-guessing myself, because this season for Keselowski has looked almost scarily identical to 2012. Some of the locales where he's won races, the way his momentum has shifted, and just starting off on the right foot with the chase. I think Keselowski has basically made the statement of, now, if you're going to win it, come take it from me, because we're not giving it up.
Well, at the very least, I think at this point, regardless of what happens later on in the chase, for the next few races, if you're playing fantasy NASCAR on NASCAR.com or Yahoo or whatever, the one guy that you have to have, and you have to clear out your roster to get him, because he's got that kind of momentum with him. And I think you're right. If he continues this trend, it's going to make his chase look an awful lot like the chase of a fellow Midwesterner a couple of, 3 years ago, I guess, who went on to win a whole bunch of races and take the championship on a tiebreaker. So he does anything like that, it'll be lights out very quick. And, oh, by the way, where do we go this weekend? New Hampshire. And who won the July race in New Hampshire and led the most laps along the way? I believe it was Brad Keselowski, Jacob, was it not?
Yeah, it was. And trust me, I've already been thinking about that for our performance picks later, and I'm keeping a couple cards close to my vest, but trust me, I've already thought about Brad Keselowski, and there's going to be a lot more thinking to do after this break. We're going to take care of some business, but we'll come back, talk Nationwide and Truck Series action, along with a little bit more stuff along the way. There's so much more left to go here on the Madness tonight, and we keep going right after this. Stay tuned. You're listening to Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit StockCarSteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
Packers,
Vikings,
Red State,
Blue State.
We come from different places.
Uptown,
Downtown.
We come to different conclusions.
half empty,
Half full.
But no matter how different we are, we're all connected, and we can all make a difference. That's why United Way brings people, expertise, and resources together to improve the education, income, and health of our communities, the building blocks for a better life. When we live united, our efforts, magnified by others, add up to real change. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly, so do our communities. But real change won't happen without you.
Live united.
So let's look beyond our differences.
Live united.
One by one, let's make a difference. Let's reach out a hand to one and influence the condition of all.
Live united.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman and Tom Baker, along with the rest of our cast here around tonight's roundtable. We talked the Chase and the Sprint Cup in our opening segment. Now we move to the Nationwide and Camping World Truck Series events, which oddly, were moved to a same-day doubleheader, kind of like what we'll see in 2015 at the Atlanta Motor Speedway at the end of February, beginning of March, but this one was not planned at all. Rain biting the Truck Series on Friday night. And, James, for all the action we talked about in the opening segment, I think we saw just about the opposite on Saturday between both the Nationwide and truck races. Basically, Kyle Busch leading most of the laps and Cup drivers taking it like we've become so accustomed to. But I was impressed by Kevin Harvick late in the going in Saturday afternoon's Nationwide race on a two-tire gamble, able to hold off Busch's charge through the pack.
I guess you can be surprised a little bit, but you look at Harvick's track record. He did win the first two races. Ran at the place. Nearly won the race on Sunday, too. He can get around that track no matter how you slice it, no matter what kind of situation you put him in. It's just one of those places that he runs really, really well at, and better on average than he does some of the other tracks that visit. So add to it the fact that he's got top-notch equipment in the Nationwide car, and I guess it's a little out of the ordinary, but not overly, not at least for me.
I'll take that, and certainly it's not out of the ordinary. JR Motorsports has been the top of the heap all season long. Tom, I guess I'll turn to you now because we saw the two dominant teams in those two series go to victory lane. We've watched JRM just destroy everybody in the Nationwide series, and just like their counterparts in the Nationwide series, KBM basically destroying everybody in the Truck Series yet again. But I have to admit, usually I'm disappointed to see Kyle Busch win a truck race. Wasn't quite as disappointed this time because he came from the back not once but twice to win that race Saturday night in the Windy City. So for all the things that I could say about Kyle dipping down and taking it to him, he at least had to earn this one.
Well, he had to earn it, but on the other hand, I guess it's the half full or half empty situation. The half full is your optimism in saying, well, he had to earn it. He came from the back twice to win it. But the half empty looks at it and says, well, he made that look awfully easy, didn't he? He came from the back twice and still won. So it's just one of those situations where you just scratch your head. I mean, those trucks are so dominant in that series. Kyle Busch Motorsports is so dominant. I mean, granted, Darrell doesn't always win, Bubba doesn't always win, or whatever. But when Kyle gets in one of those trucks, I mean, he doesn't lose very often, and when he does, it's just pure circumstance. It's not because somebody's just flat out faster. So, kind of an interesting situation there. The Nationwide race was, again, it was predominantly Kyle Busch until Chase Elliott got going, and toward the end, obviously, I don't know. It's a weird. Those two series have been kind of interesting for me because you still have the 54 and the 22 and the 5 cars in that in the Nationwide series that are tough, and then of course Chase Elliott, and then in the trucks you've got basically or KBM and everybody else. I don't know. I enjoyed the Nationwide race. I enjoyed I enjoyed the truck race as well. Just watching Kyle do what he does. I mean, Kyle is just none of. I don't think anybody that has an issue with people dipping down is taking away from Kyle or his driving ability, or even at least for my speaking just for me, I don't have a problem that Kyle does it as long as the rules allow him to do it. It just I just don't think that it necessarily brings a lot of new fans into the fold when you pretty much know who's going to win the race before it starts. But the the Nationwide Series has been a great series all year long, and it's been to watch Chase Elliott grow and mature the way he has, Jacob, has been absolutely spectacular, just spectacular. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who is ready for Cup. I really honestly believe that Chase Elliott could go to Sprint Cup next year and do just fine, be quite competitive, but the fact that they'll probably give him another year in the Nationwide Series should worry the rest of the Nationwide Series greatly.
Yeah, because not only does it give him a chance to win a championship in 2015, he's still trying to do it this year. Kyle Magda, speaking of Chase Elliott and his championship hopes, he didn't run as well at the end of that race as I expected him to, and actually lost a couple of points to his teammate Regan Smith when all was said and tallied at the end of the day in Chicago on Saturday. The question now we've seen them be really evenly matched, if I can hold my tongue together here, but now the question becomes, is Chase starting to cool off down the stretch, and if he is, can Regan Smith capitalize?
Right now, Chase Elliott is doing all he has to do right now. You know, he led a lap in the race Saturday, and yeah, it could definitely happen. I mean, all it takes is a few bad races for Chase Elliott, and Regan Smith is right there. But, you know, with those, like you guys have been saying, with those JR Motorsports cars, they've been fast all season, especially on the super speedways and the intermediate tracks. Just they have the speed flat out. That's why you haven't seen Kyle Busch winning as much, is because those JGR cars have been lacking horsepower a little bit, but they're getting better, as you just saw on Saturday, with Kyle Busch leading a lot of that race. So, you know, it's going to probably be down to those two guys all the way down to Homestead, because they pretty much finish close to each other every week. So I think you're going to probably see the championship come out of the Junior Motorsports stable.
Oh, look, we're talking about Toyota being down on horsepower in not just the Sprint Cup Series, but the Nationwide Series, too. Gee, I wonder what that's all about. No, that's a problem we've been talking about all season long. James, here's the question. The only series we've seen Toyota just mop the floor with everybody in is the Camping World Truck Series this year. They've not had the success, save for Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin, in either of the top two series this season that they're so used to. So now we talk about the fact, okay, Toyota's got a chase to worry about. They've got drivers in contention. What do they have to do to right the ship this season? Because we're getting later and later and later, and I know they've won a couple of races this year between the Nationwide and Cup Series, but it just seems like all the way around, Toyota is struggling.
Well, at this point in the season, I'm not really all that sure you can do that much. To a large degree, I liken it a lot to Formula One. And in F1, you'll see some teams kind of pitch their current year in order to develop a really, really strong program for next year. I think a great example, if you go back to 2008, 2009, when you had Braun GP just pitch that final year under the Honda banner and completely dominate with Jenson Button to win the title. To some degree, I almost feel like that might be the best option for Toyota at this point, because this late in the season, unless you've had something coming down the R&D pipeline for a while, then I really don't think that you're going to be able to get anything to these guys in time to make a huge difference. And I think you just have to go back to the drawing board and make sure you come out strong when you get to Daytona. Maybe Tom knows a little bit something more than I do, but at least the way I see it, that's just how it goes.
Well, I don't know if I know more than you, James. I was just thinking as you were saying that, you brought up an interesting analogy, but I don't think that's really exactly the case here. First of all, the 54 is up front in almost every race, no matter who's in it. The difference, I think, one of the differences is that in the Nationwide Series, there aren't as many top Toyota teams. You don't see Michael Waltrip racing with Nationwide, a bunch of Nationwide cars. You just don't have as many Toyotas in the Nationwide Series as you do the Chevy teams. And, of course, you got Penske, who's always had a strong Nationwide team. So I think that's a part of it. But I also think that when you look at the Junior Motorsports stable, there's a great consistency in those particular cars. the Regan Smith may not win a lot of races, but he's always in the top 5, top 10. That's what keeps him in the points hunt. And then you've got Chase Elliott, and no matter who's in the 5 car, I mean, Kevin Harvick just kills people in the 5 car. Whenever he gets in it, he's either winning the race or he's in contention to win the race. There's a great consistency among the junior motorsports cars this year that's been missing. I think that's why you're seeing that stable really challenging this year, both the 54 car and the 22 car out of the Penske stable, who have been the 2 cars in Nationwide over the last few years that have pretty much dominated the series. So I think it's just a little different picture there, whereas in the trucks, I mean, it just seems like there's not as much manufacturer support from the other guys, save for Toyota with Kyle's program, and I think Ford probably to a degree with Keselowski, but and that's what keeps the BKR trucks competitive. The other guys like Ford Motorsports that are as competitive as they are, I think a lot of that, quite honestly, is just really, really, really good stuff by the teams and drivers who just know how to drive those things. You know, that's what keeps people competing. But I think the lack of a lot more Toyota teams in the Nationwide Series to a degree hurts the effort there, not so much necessarily the horsepower.
All right, I'll take that. And while we're talking about the Nationwide Series, can I just offer up to you, Tom, that I find it slightly ironic that the only driver who has gotten in the 5 car this season who is a past winner in the Nationwide Series that's not won in that car is Dale Jr. himself. Casey Kane's done it. Kevin Harvick's done it. I'm discounting Austin Terrio and Josh Berry just because they've not been in the car long enough to know any better yet. But the boss gets in it, and yeah, I guess he can be slightly quick, but he still hasn't won a race this year.
Yeah, it is interesting actually, and I don't know what to attribute that to. Although a lot of the races that Junior runs, I think hasn't even driving that car as much at restrictor plate races as anything. Am I off on that? I mean, I think a lot of the times when he runs it, they're not necessarily Junior's best tracks, but that is kind of ironic that he would be the only one who hasn't won. But again, I just think the consistency's there across that stable, and that's why you're seeing the performances out of all 3 cars that you are. And it was actually good to see Regan gain some points this week, just because it keeps it interesting. I mean, I think we were all prepared for Chase Elliott to go on a run here and kind of escape, but it was actually not a bad thing from the standpoint of interest that Regan picked up a few points. If we could get him back in victory lane here, and there's a couple tracks coming up that Regan excels at, it's going to be very interesting. And it just goes to show you don't necessarily need the chase to have a good points fight right down to the last race. But I think that argument and the argument about whether this year's chase format is better than other chase formats are 2 entirely different matters.
This is true, and we can continue to debate that until the cows come home, but we won't, because right now we're going to take another caution flag and take care of some business while the rest of us figure out what we're going to debate next. I have a feeling Joel Sebastianelli is going to come back from this break, and he'll have a couple of things to argue about. It seems he usually does, and race fans, if you want to get in on the conversation and talk with us about motorsports or tell us we're wrong, or however you want to discuss the action from the weekend, you can do that. You can call us at 347-989-0783 to talk motorsports with us and give us your opinions on the racing weekend. We'll continue the discussion when we come back to Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Stay with us.
Race Chaser Online and Speed77 Radio has gone live. All 3 of the Race Chaser Online Speed77 Radio branded podcasts can now be found live on blogtalkradio.com. Look for Motorsports Madness Monday nights at 7 p.m. hosted by Jacob Seelman and Tom Baker, along with all of their cast of characters, covering everything from NASCAR, IndyCar, F1, Super Dirt Car Series Modifieds, World of Outlaws, Sprint Cars, V8 Supercars, and everything in between. That's Motorsports Madness, Monday nights at 7 p.m. Then on Tuesday nights, it's time to talk New York Dirt with Turn 5 Live, hosted by Steve Ovens, Clint Miller, and Brad Ovens. They talk everything from the local scene in the Finger Lakes to the national dirt racing news. That's Turn 5 Live, Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. on blogtalkradio.com/Turn5Live. Then on Thursday nights, it's time to go full fendered action with the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, Thursday nights at 7 p.m., hosted by Tom Baker, Jacob Seelman, and Kyle Souza. That's the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Go to blogtalkradio.com/RaceChaserOnline, and for all of the news, views, and driver interviews, go to www.racechaseronline.com.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to the madness here on Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, and our whole cast of characters around tonight's round table, and race fans as we continue to roll through the weekend in motorsports. If you want to get in on the conversation, call in and chat with us. 347-989-0783 is the Race Chaser hotline for whatever you want to discuss, from NASCAR to IndyCar, all the way down to the grassroots levels. Again, that is 347-989-0783. And I mentioned open wheel, time to bring in the expert on open wheel here at Speed 77, our resident wine and cheeser, Joel Sebastianelli. Joel, I tell you, we've had some fun things going on over the weekend, even though there wasn't any racing going on. Still a lot of things to talk about. F1's coming up in Singapore, but just this is the part of the season where you like to talk about things because there's so much speculation and not enough reality.
As if I don't like to talk about things any other time. Certainly it's so much speculation this time of year, but even Formula One in their off-week has given us so much to speculate about. Everything from what's going to happen on the track in the final 6 races of the season, from Singapore this weekend onward in the battle at Mercedes between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton, to the battle between Daniel Ricciardo and Sebastian Vettel, who's truly the number one driver at Red Bull. And, of course, at Ferrari, Luca de Montezemolo out as Ferrari chairman after he announced a 3-year extension earlier in the year, and all signs, at least outwardly from him, pointed to him staying on at Ferrari. He's now gone after the Italian Grand Prix, the home race for Ferrari, right by their factory in Maranello. So much to talk about, so much to take in, and there hasn't even been any racing in Formula One in the last few weeks.
That's exactly right. I want to talk about the shakeup at Ferrari for just a second because you mentioned it in your open wheeling blog this weekend for Race Chaser, and I'm curious to get a little bit of expanded thought from you on this. You called it the end of an era for F1, that with the changes shaking up at Ferrari, that this was the end of an era, out with the old, and now the new is going to flourish. Talk a little bit more about that, because I read the blog myself, and I'm sitting here mulling it over going, I can see the point, even though I feel like we've kind of been at this stage where the lines have been blurred the last couple years, and I see where you're coming from, that this is kind of the final nail in the coffin of, here we go, this is the next era.
It really is. Formula One and all racing in general, you can usually divide up into about a decade at a time of these different eras, and this era is a little bit more significant. Look at everything that's happened in Formula One over the last few years, the direction that it's heading. Where Formula One used to be all about excess, it's now about cutting back. It's all about cost cutting. That's the name of the game. There's so many changes being implemented over the course of the next 4 seasons, ideally. Everything from standardizing particular parts in the car to make things cheaper for teams, restricting testing, all across the board. There's all these different things. The new power units is all about downsizing to a certain extent in Formula One. Luca Montezemolo was the last man remaining in Formula One who represented the old school style, if you will. If you can call this new Formula One new school and just the last era and the era before that old school, Luca's a part of that old school. And although this isn't solely related to Formula One, it's very much a Formula One decision, and he's the last man out there who represents the unlimited testing and all of this excess that we've seen forever in Formula One. Now, he brings so much to the table and did for many years. He's going to have a very long-lasting legacy in Formula One. But with Ferrari's expansive resources, his style, what he wants to see in Formula One, he was the last of a dying breed, so to speak, and now that breed is very much dead now that Luca Montezemolo is gone. So I think more than just the implications at Ferrari, this may be a very definitive step, and one of the last definitive steps in transferring from one era to another in Formula One. I just think it's a very interesting take and a very interesting way to look at the situation beyond just there's a new chairman at Ferrari and things are going to change both in the road car division and in Formula One.
Joel, Joel, do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, I'm trying to get a handle on what your take is in terms of whether you think some of these changes or the new era is this good or bad in your mind that a lot of this is happening in Formula One?
Well, that's a very good question. I think it's a little bit of both, at least as far as the direction it's heading in terms of cost cutting. It's what they have to do because Formula One is in a rut right now. These teams just simply do not have the cash to keep going the way they have before. It's always been said that the only way to make $1 million in racing is if you start with 2. And in Formula One, that number is exponentially higher to make those sorts of money. You just have so much money invested in this, and eventually the well is running dry at this point. There's been talk, Adam Parr recently brought it up, and there's been speculation that Formula One may move to 8 teams or maybe even 7 teams in lower amounts with more cars, which would mean teams like Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, there would be a monopoly on Formula One, and those teams with those expansive resources would completely rid your lower-level teams out of Formula One. So if you want to avoid that happening, you want to avoid that monopoly and avoid it being 100% a rich man's playground where the rich get richer and the poor always get poorer to the point that they can't possibly get poor anymore. They're broke, they're gone, they're out of the picture. You have to do this sort of thing. And for Luca Montezemolo, maybe 10 years, his style would have worked, but his management style, what he wants to see in Formula One, doesn't necessarily work as well now. Doesn't mean he didn't do some great things when he was with Ferrari. He did with Jean Todt and Ross Brawn. It put Ferrari permanently on the map as being right up there with the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL, for example, teams that are legendary, that live just beyond their sport. Even if you aren't a fan of the particular league, you know that when you see Ferrari, there's a certain expectation and a certain something that comes to mind for everybody with that brand. It's a very universal brand recognition with Ferrari, and much of that has to do with Luca Montezemolo. But now I think it's just time for a change. It's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just time for change.
All right, I'll take that, Joel, and with that I'll take it right into another Formula One topic because we're talking about big teams and big names, and you actually brought it up in your open discussing Daniel Ricciardo and Sebastian Vettel, so I want to shift from Ferrari to Red Bull now, and there's been a lot of debate the last couple of days about Ricciardo supposedly, according to reports, asking for number 1 status, Sebastian not wanting to give it up, and a little bit of a tug-of-war, it seems, is starting to break out between these two, and I can see where Ricciardo's coming from. He's won 3 races this year, and the defending champ and 4-time defending champ has not really done anything is it now time again for change? And is this potentially the beginning of Sebastian Vettel's departure from Red Bull?
If you had told me just 5 months ago that this would have been a possibility, that this would be a discussion that we were having right now, I may not have laughed, but I certainly wouldn't have taken it seriously. But now there may actually be something to this speculation. Is this sort of the beginning of the end, if you will, with Red Bull? Look, it's all speculation. We know that McLaren, at least behind closed doors, supposedly made an offer to Sebastian Vettel that he turned down. But it's a very fluid situation at Red Bull, and it's one that the team has tried to play coy on a little bit. Ricardo wants that number one status, but the team still says, no, Sebastian is our champion. We want to do the best for Sebastian. He's getting a new chassis ahead of this Singapore Grand Prix that's coming up this weekend. But Ricardo has outraced him in the majority of the races this season. He has 3 victories to his name, and Vettel has none. The learning curve with this new car has taken so long for Vettel to adjust to that, you know, if you have somebody with as much money as he does, as much clout, as many world championships, it's very tough without Daniel Ricciardo really, truly being in the championship fight, which really won't happen this year. At this point, it's, barring something remarkable, it's going to be a Mercedes champion. Next season, I think, is when we'll really know who's number 1 and who's number 2 and where that line will be drawn. We'll have a much better idea of Sebastian Vettel's future because next season, let's say Ricciardo gets off to a great start, I think maybe he does unofficially become the number 1 driver in that team, and then maybe Sebastian Vettel's exploring his options. We know Kimi Räikkönen, at the end of his contract with Ferrari, will, at least for now, has no desire to race in Formula One anymore. He plans to retire when that contract is over. So could we see Sebastian Vettel make his way to Ferrari? Could he go to McLaren at some point? Because I think the situation, regardless of what happens next year, is certainly not something that's set in stone. For all I know, it could be 2 guys who aren't on the team right now, 2 years from now. So, again, it's a very fluid situation. There's always so much that's changing, and really from day to day in Formula One, there's a lot that's changing. But I think people who thought that perhaps Sebastian Vettel would finish his career with Red Bull, look, the guy's 27 years old, and I don't see that being the case. He's said before that he's always fantasized a little bit about being with Ferrari. We've seen him on the podium at the Italian Grand Prix with this very noticeable twinkle in his eye, looking out at the Tifosi. Of course, it's something special, and I'm sure every driver has that twinkle, but David Hobbs has said in the past that he believes that Vettel will one day race for Ferrari, and that's the moment he thinks that it really dawned on him that the 4-time world champion would eventually race for the prancing horse. So time will eventually tell, but if it is no longer going to be a long-term relationship from here on out with Red Bull, I think it'll come within the next year and a half.
All right. With that, we're going to take a caution flag here during this edition of Open Wheel Central, but we've got more stuff to talk about with Joel coming up after the break, including a look at the series opening Formula E race that took place over the weekend. And, boy, there were some nasty moments at the finish of that one that we'll get to when we come back. You're listening to Speed 77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online.
The odds of a young girl being discovered by an industry insider while singing to herself pumping gas? 1 in 300 million. The odds of the daughter of a clergyman from Severn, Maryland spending 11 weeks at number 1 on the U.S. singles charts? 1 in 19 million. The odds of going on to win 6 Grammy Awards? 1 in 1.4 million. The odds of selling over 40 million records? 1 in 800,000. The odds of this musician and performer having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 110. I'm Toni Braxton, and I encourage you to learn the signs of autism at autismspeaks.org. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference. Autism Speaks. It's time to listen. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit StockCarSteel.com or SRI-Supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online, talking open wheel right now. And race fans, if you want to get in on the conversation, give us a call at 347-989-0783 to talk motorsports with us. Again, that's 347-989-0783. And sitting down with our open wheel expert, Joel Sebastianelli. And Joel, to put a bow on Formula One, not that this season has been anything overly out of the ordinary as far as predictability, but real quickly, looking at Singapore, obviously it's a track where Lewis Hamilton has looked good in years past, and we keep saying it looks like it's going to be Mercedes the rest of the way, barring some imminent surprise. So what's the scoop from you? Do we see Hamilton go back to victory lane again this weekend?
Well, 3 years in a row, we've seen Sebastian Vettel in victory lane in Singapore, and I don't think anybody's really banking on Sebastian Vettel at this point. If anyone, they're thinking Daniel Ricciardo would be the Red Bull in victory lane, just to go back to what we talked about last segment. But as far as the two Mercedes drivers go, they've both had some mixed results and some very good results as well. Nico Rosberg finished second with Williams in 2008 in the inaugural Singapore Grand Prix on the Formula One calendar. He's finished fifth a couple times, finished fourth last year. For Lewis Hamilton, he won the race in 2009 and finished third in the inaugural race in 2008, but those are both with McLaren. Last year and fifth in 2011, the rest have been mainly retirements for Lewis Hamilton. So for Lewis, it's gone both ways. We know that these guys are both fairly good at this track, and of course when you're driving a Mercedes, you're going to be a top 5 car no matter what. So with the top cars out there, you would figure the two of them would certainly be the two favorites. I think Lewis Hamilton is the driver who has the momentum at this point. Of course, there was the incident in Belgium where he retired, but since then, dating back to the Austrian Grand Prix, he's finished on the podium every single race outside of Belgium. And Belgium, Canada, and Australia, the only races he hasn't finished on the podium this year. So I think he's a little bit harder than Nico Rosberg right now. For being a thinker, Nico Rosberg, I think we saw, may have been inside Lewis Hamilton's head a little bit, but it seems like after what happened at Belgium, the 214 Stars, the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, it seems as though Lewis may actually be in Rosberg's head. It may be the other way around of what we previously thought. So I think Lewis is the favorite heading into this race, but with a 22-point gap between Nico in first and Lewis in second, it's definitely going to be tough to make it all up in this one race.
I'll take that, and I'll also take that right into going to another topic here, and it's one that you've been talking about all weekend long ever since we saw it, and it's a topic that we get to discuss for the first time on the Madness tonight because the brand new Formula E series launched over the weekend in Beijing, China for electric-powered Formula single-seater cars. Joel, I know this is one that you were quite intrigued by, just from the standpoint of it was something really, really different compared to what we've been so used to. But what were your impressions of the race? And, of course, talk a little bit about the last lap incident that we saw as well, because I know we expected some on-track action, but I don't think we could have expected quite what happened at the end of this one in China.
Well, it was a very intriguing first round of the series, for sure. I don't think anybody really knew what to expect in Beijing. And we were treated to a very fun but very different race. I likened it a bit to like watching Mario Kart in slow motion. It's got the same sort of sound. The cars are undeniably slow compared to what you'd see anywhere else, although they can corner at a similar rate. It's just down the straight. There's not a lot of speed. The car setup is totally different. Everything about them is different. But that was part of the intrigue heading in. So if you were actually awake at 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, you could have watched the finale go around, and we were treated to a very good race. Last lap of the race, Nico Prost, Alain Prost's son, and Nick Heidfeld. Remember him from Formula One, most Formula One starts and most Formula One points without a victory in F1? This guy hasn't won an open-wheel race since Formula 3000 at the A1 ring in Austria, where F1 returned this year, in 1999. And, of course, it's Formula E. It doesn't have all the prestige yet, but running alongside Prost in the final lap, in the final corner, turn 20, Heidfeld has the inside line clearly, trying to make the pass from second to first, and Prost swoops to the left-hand side. Look it up on YouTube if you haven't seen this yet. It was a defensive driving decision that made Pastor Maldonado look like a gentleman driver. It was a heat-seeking missile. It was honestly shocking, and there's going to be some questions to answer after this race. For one, to Nico Prost, what in the wide world of sports were you thinking by blocking like that? It wasn't even a block. It was really just a side swipe. And secondly, we need to rethink sausage curbing, because when Heidfeld spun, he went over the big sausage curbing. It's like a bump. Just obviously envision a sausage just in the form of a curve. We've seen Formula cars launched before this year, and the same thing happened to Heidfeld. Even at a much slower rate of speed, he was launched over the curb and went up, wheels up, and helmet first into the fencing. It could have been a really serious accident. I immediately thought the worst, and I usually don't do that given how sturdy these cars are nowadays. I had my heart in my mouth when this happened, and thankfully for Nick Heidfeld, he was able to walk away, and since then, Prost has taken responsibility for the accident, and the two of them have apparently smoothed things over, at least to the media. Kind of intriguing, too, because these two are teammates at Rebellion Racing and Endurance Racing, and they won their class in the 24 Hours of Le Mans this year. So you'd think that these are the last two guys you'd ever see tangle on the racetrack, at least in Formula E, but with the misfortune of those two getting taken out, Lucas de Grassi and Audi win the first race, and quite surprising for the Beijing E-Prix. So much to talk about. Formula E isn't quite there yet, but it's a work in progress, and it was kind of cool to see it for the very first time.
I'm still blown away here by the fact that not only did Joel just make a Mario Kart reference, but I thought he was going to go off on some tangent involving Snuggies for dogs or Viagra for automobiles. That's the most fired up I've seen you in a long time, Joel.
Just so many intriguing things to think about. And if Formula E is like Mario Kart in slow motion, Nico Prost is like, you remember the red turtle shells in that game? It's exactly what Nico Prost was. It's like a heat-seeking missile into Heidfeld. Certainly one or two of them are going to want to put behind them, and a grid penalty will be given 2 months from now when the series resumes at a street circuit in Malaysia. I think the thing that I'm honed in on is just that it's important to remember this is only the beginning of electric technology. We're not at the end of the road for it yet. There's going to be so far to come in multiple aspects. But if you're interested in looking at a good read, go to Racer.com and look up Catherine Legg. And she wrote a column on what it's like to drive one of these cars. And you see how different it is. The battery is so heavy that the weight distribution is actually moved much further to the back of the car than you'd normally run, which is very tricky. It's something that these drivers haven't really driven with the sensation before. There's a lot of oversteer and entering the corners, and then understeer as you're getting out of the corners because of the weight distribution. So it's a very different style. The aerodynamics are a lot different, and unfortunately, because of the race trim versus qualifying trim, qualifying you're going all out, but you're actually conserving battery in the race. So you get the feeling that they're really not going all out, which, of course, when you're going to have to make a pit stop to change cars, to literally change cars in the middle of a race, it's completely different than anything we've seen. I think there's a long way to come for Formula E, especially with the presentation, which was awful. They actually had a DJ playing music at points during the event, which was just mind-boggling. The sound mix was off at the announcers. The world feed was surprisingly under par, or surprisingly over par, I guess you should say, if you want to use a golf reference. They really triple bogeyed the first round of this Series Championship, but they've got 2 months to regroup, just as the drivers and teams do. I think there'll be a lot of changes that we'll see, hopefully one of them being that there's no more sausage curbing anywhere. Let's get rid of that, and let's find that isn't going to launch race cars and turn them into planes, even when going over them at just 80 miles per hour. So plenty of things for Formula E to improve on, but it was very intriguing, and I can't wait to see where it comes from here, because it's just so different from anything we've seen. We see new racing series pop up all the time, but nothing quite like this. This isn't a league of its own, truly.
Video games, Joel ranting, and golf. Okay, I'll take that and move into one more subject that I don't usually talk about with you, Joel. But given the circumstances and the fact that we don't have Ryan Kent to refer to tonight, I'll bring it up to you really quickly and see if you're any more fired up than you've been the rest of this half hour. The Mazda Road to Indy finished their open test for all three branches over the course of the weekend at the IMS Road Course, the Chris Griffiths Memorial Test, and there were two things that I noticed really quickly. Number one, Spencer Pigot going to the top of the board in Indy Lights. No surprise, he's destroyed everything in Pro Mazda, and I think we expected that. But what I didn't expect was Parker Kligerman, yes, for all you race fans out there that are listening and think I just stuttered, NASCAR Parker Kligerman, in a Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports car, second quick. Huh?
Exactly. Huh? You wouldn't have thought it. Good for Parker Kligerman. I think he's a very talented driver, and might this be a bit of a new journey in his career. He's been in the Nationwide Series for the last few years, but rode the Indy Lights car to test and performed really, really well. He's competed in open wheel before. He's won in Skip Barber racing, I believe, although that was a very long time ago. That was the early 2000s, I believe. He's raced in this before. He's been a little bit into USAC midget racing for a little while, but with Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports, this is a guy I would love to see make his way into open wheel. You wonder just how open the doors really are for him in stock cars. You know, is it better to race in the Nationwide Series and be mired there for a few years, or is it better to go into Indy? And I think if he goes into Indy, he'd certainly be able to get a ride at some point. He's a very talented driver. It would be very good for somebody like him who's from the Northeast as well. You may be able to correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I believe he's from Connecticut. You don't have a lot of drivers from the Northeast racing in IndyCar, so maybe a bit of a revitalized energy up there where he used to race and get some fans interested there. I think it would be great to see him, but especially with the new Indy Lights car, which was just recently tested by James Hinchcliffe, among others, the new Indy Lights car looks great. It looks like an Indy Lights version of the DW12, so certainly a departure from what we're used to seeing in the old ugly Indy Lights cars. That old chassis will be gone, and the drivers seem to really like it, so I think Mazda Road to Indy and Indy Lights definitely taking a step in the right direction.
All right, I really hate to say that this round of Open Wheel Central is done because I don't want it to end. This has been a whole lot of fun, but I know you have other things to get to, Joel, and we've got another hour of this show left to go yet, but as always, appreciate you coming on, and, you know, it's fun to listen to. It's fun to listen to when you get fired up like this, and I can only imagine what we might have to talk about after this coming weekend in Singapore, because if it's anything like the rest of Formula One has been this season, we ain't seen nothing yet.
No, we haven't. We've seen a lot, but so much more to come. Can't wait for the weekend, wherever you may be and whatever type of racing you may be watching. Be sure to enjoy it. And one last shout-out. I'll make two shout-outs, actually. One to Takuma Sato for pulling off the fastest lap of the Beijing Grand Prix in Formula E. He is racing there. Secondly, a shout-out to Andretti Autosport for making it onto the first podium with Frank Montagny. He finished second, and Charles Pic finished third. So two great finishes for Andretti Autosport, and Formula E doing kind of a cool thing, actually awarding bonus points for drivers who get the pole and the fastest lap. I'd like to see that transferred to other series as well. So a shout-out to them. Be sure to enjoy your racing this weekend because there is so much of it going around all across the world.
Cough, cough. IndyCar, pay attention. We have good suggestions here. With that, we'll take a caution flag, and we've still got a lot more left to go. Stay with us. We continue the madness right after this. You're listening to Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online.
Race Chaser Online and Speed77 Radio has gone live. All three of the Race Chaser Online Speed77 Radio branded podcasts can now be found live on blogtalkradio.com. Look for Motorsports Madness Monday nights at 7 p.m., hosted by Jacob Seelman and Tom Baker, along with all of their cast of characters, covering everything from NASCAR, IndyCar, F1, Super Dirt Car Series Modifieds, World of Outlaws, Sprint Cars, V8 Supercars, and everything in between. That's Motorsports Madness, Monday nights at 7 p.m. Then on Tuesday nights, it's time to talk New York Dirt with Turn 5 Live, hosted by Steve Ovens, Clint Miller, and Brad Ovens. They talk everything from the local scene in the Finger Lakes to the national dirt racing news. That's Turn 5 Live, Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. on blogtalkradio.com/Turn5Live. Then on Thursday nights, it's time to go full fendered action with the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, Thursday nights at 7 p.m., hosted by Tom Baker, Jacob Seelman, and Kyle Souza. That's the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Go to blogtalkradio.com/RaceChaserOnline, and for all of the news, views, and driver interviews, go to www.racechaseronline.com.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Oh boy, and we've just finished the first hour. I'm not even sure what we're coming up to next, but I'll tell you, it's been fun so far. Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, and a whole bunch of lunatics around tonight's roundtable. No, we've got a cast of Motorsports insiders here, but I'd say we call this show, Tom, the Madness with good reason. We're leaving open wheel and going to dirt, and, you know, when we talk dirt, it gets a little scary, but after where this show has been so far tonight, I'm almost a little nervous that the white walls are going to be coming next.
Well, I think we live on the edge of that every Monday night here, and look, we cover a lot of ground on this show, and there's really no form of racing that we won't talk about if someone wants to. So that's why we call it the Madness, and it lives up to its name.
Yes, it has. And race fans, if you want to get in on our crazy conversation here tonight, you can call in to the Race Chaser hotline at 347-989-0783 to talk motorsports, everything from dirt to pavement to open wheel to full fendered action and more. Once again, that call-in number is 347-989-0783. And speaking of dirt, I have to bring in one of the professors of dirt. I think Dr. Dick Berggren was the original professor of dirt, but we'll call him our professor and bring in Steve Ovens to talk about a little bit of everything right now. We had sprint car racing over the weekend. We had dirt late model racing action over the weekend. We had big block modified racing action over the weekend. We had a pavement track that turned into a dirt track for the weekend. Have I missed anything so far?
No, gentlemen. I'll take potpourri for 1,000, please.
That fits.
Yeah, a lot of action to talk about, Jacob, and I'll get right into it here. Let's start right off the top of the bat with the World of Outlaw sprint cars. And can you guys believe we've gone 14 straight days without a Donnie Schatz win? That might be a record here as we get ready to go to Kokomo Speedway in Indiana tomorrow. A very interesting note that I read on the World of Outlaws Facebook page today, and this is something that rings true locally here for some of the racetracks we cover in New York, is fans in Indiana have clamored for World of Outlaw sprint cars racing to come back to Indiana. And they've got 2 shows in 2 days in Indiana, both at Kokomo and Terre Haute. And if the race fans want this to continue to happen and they clamor for it and they want it, I would just encourage these race fans to get out to Kokomo and Terre Haute the next night and get out there and support those racetracks. Should be two excellent nights of action. We talk about Kokomo, and they sent out, they always send out a pre-race to talk about the event. And looking over some of the winners, it's interesting to note, especially with this season, that Donnie Schatz, from what we see on the list here, doesn't have a win at Kokomo. However, Steve Kinzer has a whole bunch of wins at Kokomo, and Tim Kading won in 2013 on June 5th that year in 2013. So that should be interesting to follow. Donnie Schatz, of course, he has a 201-point lead over Darren Pittman, over 20 wins, back-to-back seasons. That hasn't been done since 2002 and 2003 with Steve Kinzer, and we know how many championships the King has. So let's make some connections there. And also, as we look ahead to the return to Terre Haute, they haven't been there since 2006, Jacob, and Joey Saldana won that race. And the quote from Joey is, "I can't wait to get back there." He's got 22 quick times this season, and he'll be looking for more, looking to back up that win in 2006. So two really awesome races coming up this weekend in Indiana, or this week in Indiana. And now let's switch over to Paul McMahon. Awesome feature win the other night. The World of Outlaws have already posted the highlights from that race. Absolutely excellent racing from about second on back. Paul McMahon had a strong car all night long. But I'll tell you, the race between second through probably sixth or seventh was awesome. They were 3 wide at one point going into turn 3 late in the race. Just some awesome racing there. Good to see Paul McMahon get back into victory lane to get his 5th win of the season. And even though Donnie Schatz has a 201-point lead, as we've got about 13 or 14 shows left in the season, Jacob, I think it's great to see these guys still going out there, still grinding it out, even though Donnie seems to be kind of cruising away at this point.
He's cruising for now, and you mentioned Paul McMahon. It was his 5th win of the year. He's crossed the 20-win threshold, did that a couple wins ago, but certainly McMahon proving he's not lost his touch. But I want to talk about the other guy that won this weekend, because it's a pretty familiar last name. Kinzer, anyone? Just not the one that everybody immediately thinks of. Actually, Craig Kinzer going to victory lane at Clay County on Friday night, Steve, and I'll be the first to admit I was rather surprised by that.
Oh, absolutely. It was good to see him have a good run. I don't think a lot of people would have picked that going into the race there on Friday night. So it was good to see him pick up a win. And let me give you a stat boy stat here. It's talking about Craig Kinzer. He's got 2 wins at Kokomo, both in 2012 and 2005. So maybe a little bit of momentum headed to Kokomo for Craig Kinzer.
Ooh, Steve's pulling the stat boy word on me. I like the sound of this, and everybody, when anybody can keep up with me in the stat department, it's a good show. Steve, besides that, we saw Outlaws late models in action this weekend at Berlin Raceway of pavement fame, turned into a dirt track for the weekend. 3rd year in a row they've done that. And for the 3rd year in a row at Berlin, Darrell Lanigan wins the race. Nobody else has ever won there. And to note, here's the stat boy stat of the night right back at you. Darrell Lanigan wins his 16th late model feature event of the year with the World of Outlaws, breaks his own single-season record. And, oh, by the way, he's also got the most wins in the history of the series. I'd say Darrell Lanigan's having a pretty good year.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and looking at his points at this point as well, I mean, he's got a 284-point lead over Rick Eckert, 334 over Tim McCready, just a dominating season. I mean, looking over the stats for the season with the World of Outlaw late models, the closest guy as far as wins go is Tim McCready with 3. I mean, that's just an amazing number. We talk about Joey Saldana having such great quick time numbers in the World of Outlaw late models, but when you look at the World of Outlaw sprint cars, excuse me, but when you look at the late models, 16 wins, and the next guy in line's got 3. Just a dominating season with Darrell Lanigan. No surprise he broke that record of most wins in a single season. He's well on his way to a championship as well. We're not going to crown him yet. Of course, we've got the World Finals coming up for those guys in November down in your guys' way, down in Charlotte. And also coming up for those guys with the World of Outlaw late models. Actually, that's all they have left is the World Finals. You talked about Berlin Raceway. I was sad to see them lose their Friday night show because I know that was going to be a massive show on both nights, putting the dirt down on the asphalt. We don't see that a lot around here. It was good to see them do that up there in Michigan at Berlin, and it was too bad to see them lose their Friday night show.
Yeah, it really was. I hated that. It was disappointing, but got one of the 2 nights in, and unfortunately sometimes you're just not going to pull off messing with Mother Nature, and Mother Nature said, no, we're not going to race on Friday night. But as it is, life moves on, and real quick, Steve, want to throw Super Dirt Car action at you in action over this weekend as well, and boy, Super Dirt Car racing, usually I'm used to Brett Hearn winning and winning and winning and winning and winning, but this season that has not been the case at all. I think this is the most parity I've seen in the Super Dirt Car series in a long time, but Matt Shepard takes the win at Mohawk.
He does, and they had a night similar to what Tom probably experienced at Oswego last night. They started the events on Saturday night, ended up finishing them in the wee hours of Sunday morning. A lot of our Sportsman modified competitors that we know traveled up to Mohawk to run with their Sportsman cars, and they got done around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, so late night for those guys. But they did get the show in. They had a rainstorm, and they actually had a lot of drivers driving up from the southern part of New York, and because of the rain delay, actually made it to Mohawk in time to run with the Super Dirt Car Series. I know Danny Johnson was one of them. He just picked up a one-off deal to run at Mohawk, but they had to travel from the southern tier of New York up to Mohawk, which is up in what we would call the North Country, in order to run with those guys. But they did get it in. Matt Shepard took the win, and actually HBR took the top 2 spots with Jimmy Phelps coming in second. Interesting to note for the race fans, if you get on SuperDirtCarSeries.com, they've got the points updated as of Sunday, and all of the bonus points for home track points have been added. So Matt Shepard, Brett Hearn, and Larry White those are the guys in the top 5 that maxed out their bonus points for picking up track championships. Of course, Matt Shepard at Brewerton and Canandaigua, Brett Hearn, Albany, Saratoga, and Lebanon Valley, and then, of course, Larry White at Fulton. But really, right now, it's a 3-horse race as we head to Fonda this weekend. Matt Shepard has the lead in the series points over Brett Hearn. He leads Brett Hearn by 52 points, and he leads Billy Decker by 56 points. So typically, as we go to Fonda and Super Dirt Week, we get down to where sometimes all Brett Hearn has to do is start to win the Super Dirt Car Championship, and I think it's going to be a lot closer than that as we go to Super Dirt Week this year, and then as the championship ends at Orange County down in Middletown, New York. So good run for Matt Shepard to get a win at Mohawk. As we get ready to go to Fonda, I'm going to throw out a pick here, and I know he doesn't typically run the series religiously, but look for Stuart Friesen. He's the Fonda Speedway champion. Of course, with a big money show, the Freedom 76er, raining out this past weekend. That's I think they said that was about a $20,000 or $25,000 to win for Dirt Modifieds. That gave a lot of guys a tough choice. Do we run the Super Dirt Car Series for those points at Fonda, or do we go chase double-digit thousands of dollars this weekend?
Ooh, We like money. Really quickly, I want to make two final points, one that you don't have to respond to and one that I'll give you about 15 seconds, Steve, because I can already hear it in my head now. I'll throw my point that Anthony Nicholson goes 2 in a row at the Tennessee Fall Nationals, taking the USCS 360 sprint car win this weekend at Tennessee National Raceway in Hohenwald. And the Canadian Sprint Car Nationals, well, son of a gun, if finale night didn't go, Steve, to Jessica Zemkin.
Yes, it did, and I'll tell you what, it was a big week for Stuart Friesen and Jessica Zemkin both, as they both picked up huge wins in as many weeks. Stuart Friesen won the Cole Cup at Utica Rome the previous weekend to win $10,000, and then Jessica Zemkin turns around and wins the Canadian Sprint Car Nationals to win $10,000 as well. So big weekend for those two after they just got married.
Yeah, no kid. They're starting to get the money put together for the wedding, aren't they, Steve? So $20,000 in the bank for them right now. We appreciate Steve Ovens coming on and joining us for the dirt tonight. We're going to take a caution flag and got more still to come here tonight on The Madness. We talk to Nick Wiscola coming up right after this. Right now, this business. You're listening to Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. We'll be right back.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit StockCarSteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
For every turn, a twist. For every start, an untimely finish. For every win, someone who loses it. For every number, a nation. For every celebration, a brawl. For every split second, years of work. For every heaven, a hell. For every good old boy, a good old girl. For every curse, a prayer. For every ounce of order, a jug of chaos. For every twist, there's a turn.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
I literally have seen it all now on tonight's Madness. First, we have Joel going on another rant and talking about video games and golf, and now Kyle Sousa's back on the Madness. I'll tell you, this is a pretty landmark night here on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. We're back at the round table. I'm Jacob Seelman alongside Tom Baker, and the returning to us on Monday nights, Kyle Sousa, which that we're very glad of. But, Tom, we also have with us somebody on the Race Chaser hotline who we're getting ready to talk to, who also hails from Kyle's area up there in the New England region. And, you know, we talk about Seekonk Speedway. Having these two on with us, it's perfect.
Yeah, it really is. It's great to have Sousa back in the house again. Well, he's got a little bit of a break in his studies, and also it's great to have a young racer here who many consider to be one of New England's finest up-and-coming young racers, and this isn't just a driver development segment by any means. This young man, over the course of the 2014 season, has started to actually rewrite the Seekonk Speedway record book, and we are going to bring him out of the pits, let him go full throttle with us here on Motorsports Madness. Nicholas Stoller, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate being able to be on the show tonight.
Well, we're happy to have you on the show, and certainly you've earned the honor. You've had quite a season for yourself at Seekonk, and I think just a little bit of background is necessary here. You started at Seekonk a few years ago in the Mini Cup division, actually several years ago now in the Mini Cup division. You've won championships in the 600 Mini Cups, the 750 Mini Cups, and now you have back-to-back championships in the Legends cars. You're running late models at this moment, as well at Seekonk on Saturday nights. You're in your rookie year. But I think what we want to focus on here is the season that you've had this year, because it doesn't matter really what division you're running at a racetrack. If it draws a car count that's appropriate, and you're in, and you know, by appropriate I mean if you got a bunch of cars and those cars are competitive, and you start racking up wins, and you start making an impact on the track's record book, that's pretty spectacular. So wanted to start by just kind of running through your season to date. You started the season, first of all, with your focus mostly on the late model car, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we went into this year, you know, this would be our first year with the late model, you know, just try to get my feet wet into that, you know, just try to get more seat time with it, you know, the more laps, the more comfortable I get with the car, you know, to try to make that next step in my career.
Yeah, now, but you also maintain the Legends car, and the reason that you did that is because you had a rather unique opportunity this year to race the Legends car on Friday nights again for the third season in a situation where you've got a specific cause or partner that you're really touting with that, and you were able to build a unique program around that that's been pretty fun, actually, and has raised a lot of awareness. Talk about that program and how it related to your plan with the Legend car this year.
Yeah, you know, this year, me and my team, we actually teamed up with my Legend car team and the 1540 Connection, which, in case any of the listeners don't know, it is an early cancer detection charity for people within the ages of 15 to 40, that if, you know, they're having any symptoms or stuff that they're really not sure of, you know, it's not so bad, you know, get it checked out, because sometimes if people just overlook things, you know, and don't really think about it, sometimes it does end up, you know, being cancer or something along those lines. So I felt that it was appropriate to, you know, bring them with my Legend car team on Friday nights, seeing as on Friday nights it's more of the youth night at Seekonk. You know, not only do you have more young drivers, you know, it brings a lot of the younger fans.
Right.
You know, so I felt like it was more appropriate, you know, when I teamed up with the 1540 Connection to bring them on my Legend car, because I felt like that would be able to raise the most awareness that I could.
Yeah, and it's such a unique looking vehicle too. I think it just has a certain bit of what in the world is that appeal sort of kind of thing for the younger crowd. But okay, so you won the championship there last year in the Legends. You're not a stranger to victory lane there. You've won races in the Legends cars. You've won races in the Mini Cups. So we start off this year. How many races in a row did you win to start the season?
To start the season, I won 7 in a row to start off the year in the Legend car.
You won the first 7, and then you had an electrical issue in the 8th race, and you've gone on to win a total of 12 races. Now, there's record number 1. Well, record number 1 was you won 7 in a row to start the season. That's the first record. Nobody's ever won 7 races in a row in the same division to start the season. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think actually the record I set was 9 because it dates back to the last 2 races at the end of last season.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, so I believe the record is actually 9 now.
Statman will jump in here, Tom. And anybody that doesn't know, I'm actually the PR announcer for Fridays, and I've been dealing with Nick trackside for the last couple of weeks, and me and him been joking that he's been given the same speech each and every week. He's kind of running out of things to say because he's been such a dominant year. But in fact, the record was 6 going into this year. We do date back to last year. So winning the first 7 this year, and we date back to his last 2 last year. So he'll hold that record with 9 consecutive wins in a division at Seekonk, which is something that's tough to do in any of our divisions, but especially the Legend car, and that's a big accomplishment for Nick and the Speedway as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, people say, well, it's just a Legends car. Well, there's about 20 of those things every week, and they're very, very competitive. So now so there's the first record, 9 in a row to start the season. The second record, which Nick broke this past week, Kyle, was he has now won 12 races in one class. That's also a Seekonk Speedway record for most races won in a division in any one season.
That's correct. The actual record before Nick broke it this past week was 11 races. Ryan Van Ness did that by my calculations back in 2009 when he took his TMV Transport number 11 late model to victory lane 9 times. He actually went to Loudon that year representing Seekonk and competing in the ACT Invitational in September. So Nick's escaped that record. Now he's up to 12. And, Nick, you got 2 more weeks left. This coming Friday night, the final points night, even though you've already clinched the championship. I know you'll be going for number 13, and we've got the DAV, so you've got a chance to extend that record still.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much our goal going in the last 2 races, just try to go in, just go in and try to win and extend the record. And, I always love racing DAV, even though it's a non-points race, you just kind of end-of-the-year race. You let it all on the line, and, if you win that race, you can have bragging rights until the next season.
No question about that. Okay, so there's those first couple records. Now, you also had the honor, I believe this was a week or 2 ago, of passing both Ron Bouchard and Leo Cleary, 2 of the modified legends of New England ever. And you are now sitting 20th on the all-time wins list at Seekonk. Could you ever, in your wildest dreams, when you started racing mini cups there all those years ago, could you ever, in your wildest dreams, believed that you would be sitting in that kind of a position? And when you look back on your career to date at Seekonk, could you have ever foreseen this kind of success?
I mean, honestly, to me, I'm beside myself to even be said in the same sentence as those 2 names because, they're legends at not only Seekonk, but, racing in New England. And, to be able to, have a record of more wins than they do because they were, very successful, very great, And for me only being 17, that actually really means a lot. And, like you asked, honestly, when I started racing at Seekonk, you don't really think about that stuff, You don't really think that you would be able to be that high on the record list, not only be that high, but be able to be above and classified with, names like Leo Cleary and Ron Bouchard.
Amazing. Okay, so now you go to late models, all right, and you are sitting right now tied for 4th in points in the late model division. You've had a couple of second-place finishes, 6 or 7 or 8 top 5s now. You've really had a quite a nice rookie season for yourself in the late models. Now you're talking the possibility of going to the ACT Tour next year. So you just really want to keep on challenging yourself to reach higher, right?
Yeah, I mean, we went into this year with the late model, and our goal was, just go finish all the races, get my feet wet, just try to get myself familiar with the car so we can make the next step. We figure that if we raced a season at Seekonk before going into the ACT Tour, that would probably be better for me instead of just jumping in with all the big fish, learning the car, learning how to race with others, running up front, racing as close as you can to other competitors. And, for the season that we ended up having, it has definitely exceeded not only my expectations, but, my team. And I think that, which is good, that, I turned a couple heads this year, which I wasn't really expecting on doing, we started out the year strong, and, it just continued to now. And, I still can't believe that I'm still sitting in the top 5 for points with 1 week left.
Yeah, it's really been a great season for you. Okay, Bud, so now we come down to the last 2 races. What are your expectations? What are your goals? What are you expecting? Do you feel like you've got a late model that can win a race before the year's out? I think you've shown that's possible.
Yeah, 2 races left. I feel like it's been the past 2 weeks that we would have a win in late model. All year we have. Just kind of putting yourself in the right place at the right time. And I honestly feel like, in the next 2 races, the championship night and also DAV, I feel like we have a really good chance of, getting a win in one of these next 2 races.
Well, Nick, we certainly wish the best for you and hope that everything works out. You've had a spectacular season. Congratulations on all of that. Tell the fans how they can stay in touch with you and follow your career.
Yeah, you can follow me on, Facebook. I have a fan page called Fans of Nicholas Scola. You can follow me in that. I have a Twitter, and that Twitter would be Nicholas Scola _39. You can also stay in touch with me on my website. We update my website, nicholascola.com. We have all my updates between schedule, press releases, and all that stuff. And that would be pretty much how you can stay in touch with me.
Nick, congratulations on your accomplishments, all of them to date at Seekonk. Certainly been a good career for you so far, and you're still adding to all of that. We wish you the best going forward, and hopefully we'll be talking to you again maybe after a big DAV win in the late models.
Yeah, that'll be really nice.
That's Nicholas Scola. We're going to throw the caution flag. We've still got plenty more here on the Madness, so y'all stick around. You hear? We'll be back on the Motorsports Madness. You're listening to Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. Stay with us.
Race Chaser Online and Speed77 Radio has gone live. All 3 of the Race Chaser Online Speed77 Radio branded podcasts can now be found live on blogtalkradio.com. Look for Motorsports Madness Monday nights at 7 p.m., hosted by Jacob Seelman and Tom Baker, along with all of their cast of characters, covering everything from NASCAR, IndyCar, F1, Super Dirt Car Series Modifieds, World of Outlaws, Sprint Cars, V8 Supercars, and everything in between. That's Motorsports Madness, Monday nights at 7 p.m. Then on Tuesday nights, it's time to talk New York Dirt with Turn 5 Live, hosted by Steve Ovens, Clint Miller, and Brad Ovens. They talk everything from the local scene in the Finger Lakes to the national dirt racing news. That's Turn 5 Live, Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. on blogtalkradio.com/Turn5Live. Then on Thursday nights, it's time to go full fendered action with the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, Thursday nights at 7 p.m., hosted by Tom Baker, Jacob Seelman, and Kyle Souza. That's the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show, Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Go to blogtalkradio.com/RaceChaserOnline, and for all of the news, views, and driver interviews, go to www.racechaseronline.com.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, and our entire cast of characters still at tonight's roundtable. And we're going to talk V8 supercars with James here in just a couple of seconds, but really, really quickly want to hit on one bit of news from over the weekend with Kyle Souza. Kyle, I was hoping we were going to get to talk NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour results. Unfortunately, Mother Nature decided to play havoc, and the Riverhead 200 rained out on Saturday night, and due to Riverhead regulations and the track not being able to run past September, that race will not be made up in 2014.
Yeah, Jacob, unfortunately, Mother Nature not helping the cause with the Wheel and Modified Tour. They had some great practice sessions that did go on before the rain came in on Saturday, and from what I've heard, there was a lot of cars that were going to be in competition. We spoke Thursday on the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports show about some of the guys that we knew were going to be fast going in there. We knew Justin Bonsignor was going to be quick. We knew Ryan Preece was going to be quick. But Bonsignor went in there, won the first practice session on Saturday with a 12.088 lap, and he was really excited about going into the Riverhead 200. The others, that did not come out well. The tour ends up headed now to the they're leaving the Riverhead Raceway, and they are actually headed to Loudon, New Hampshire, Jacob, for this weekend's festivities.
I'm excited. It's a race at Loudon that I can actually sit and watch and not be bored to tears at. That's okay. I have to give this chase a little bit more credit than that. I think the Cup race might actually be fun this weekend, but the Modifieds had 35 lead changes during their most recent visit to Loudon, so I'm sure it'll be exciting, and I'm assuming we will hear from you more Thursday on the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports show, Kyle?
Yeah, Thursday night we'll dive into the statistics. I've got a list of things here we can talk about Thursday. Not only that, but the championship standings starting to hit center stage with only a couple of races remaining in the 2014 season. We'll dive into that. And don't forget, Thursday night we're also going to cover our New England news and notes, as a lot of the races up here in the Northeast this weekend, as Nick was mentioning a little bit ago, our final point night races, so the championships are on the line, and we'll try and dive into a little bit of the local track scene championship chases as well on Thursday night.
We're looking forward to that. Appreciate you coming on, Kyle. And now I'm going to turn to our resident Australian here at the round table. We get to talk V8 supercars, James Pike, and I want to hit the biggest thing that remarkably we didn't get to in the NASCAR segment. Don't know what kind of travesty that was, but it's finally official. We keep talking about it, not until the press release. Guess what? There's a press release. Marcus Ambrose is going back to Australia with Team Penske.
And that's but one of the things that we will try to cover in the next 7 minutes, but we're going to go ahead and fly because there was a lot of news coming from down under this weekend. First off, really quick before we get to the main meat of tonight, I just want to throw it out there for the Erebus Motorsport fans that they are working on a new deal to get Mercedes AMG customer support up to 2016. It looks for a good portion of the summer, like they were going to go to Volvo next year and do some sort of partnership with GRM and their fantastic program that has run really well this year. But looks like now that they're going to stick with Mercedes. They had all sorts of executives from Germany in to watch the Sandown 500 over the weekend. So that was a thing. Number two, there was also the first race of the PureTech Endurance Cup, arguably the second most prestigious race on the calendar, and the final race before the great race, the 52nd running of the Bathurst 1000, the Sandown 500 this weekend. Big fun down at the, harness track, I believe. If you really want to draw analogies, think if Australians made a road course and turned it into Dover, that kind of thing where you got horse racing and sidecar racing. But all beyond the point, what matters is that there was a big race this weekend, and not surprisingly, Jamie Whincup went completely off the front and destroyed the field with his co-driver, Paul Dumbrett. Also another side note for these next three race events, For here, Bathurst and the Gold Coast, you have co-drivers because these are endurance events. And it's a little long for one driver to run, so the Australians think. So, main points coming out of Sandown. Whincup won. You had James Courtney finishing in second with Greg Murphy. And then Garth Tander and Warren Luff, the two HRT cars, round out the podium in second and third. Tander doing a wonderful job to hold off Red Bull Racing's Craig Lowndes, who absolutely harried Tander for the final stint of the race, but could not get past him and had to settle for fourth. Tander was particularly happy about that, his first podium. So, yes, Jacob?
The biggest thing to this, and, you know, we're talking about the guys behind Jamie Whincup, but the point to all this, you said it. We had a big race. Jamie Whincup won it. But how many times have we seen this over the course of the last, 6, 8 seasons, however long it's been since Jamie started winning championships? Jamie Whincup makes a habit of winning big races.
Jamie Whincup makes a habit of winning big races, and maybe save for the exception of Bathurst last year, Mark Winterbottom has made a habit, especially as of late, of not turning up. Because while all of the main championship competitors up there in the point standings were running right up at the front of the field, Winterbottom was almost non-existent this weekend, only finished 10th. Got outrun by his teammate Chaz Mostert, who, A, is relatively fresh when it comes to the game. Only in his first season with FPR, he managed to pick up 7th. So it's not a good time for Mark Winterbottom to be going south, but he's going south. Jamie Whincup is trending up.
We call him Frosty, but for all the wrong reasons.
Well, we call him Frosty because he's got winter in his name, but we'll go with that.
All right, so with all that being said, obviously the biggest news besides Sandown was, of course, Ambrose, DJR, and Team Penske. 3 things that I like talking about in the same sentence because I think it's going to be scary when we get to going for 2015. And Jamie Whincup, I can't help but hear a little bit of the Imperial March in my head because I think Marcos Ambrose is coming back with a little bit of a score to settle, perhaps, and he's got all the resources behind him to do it. So Jamie Whincup may be winning big races right now, but I don't know that he'll be winning big races that much longer.
Maybe, but let's go over the nuts and bolts of it first. For those who have not been following this story, it's been a rumor all summer long that Marcos Ambrose would leave Richard Petty Motorsport at the end of the season to return to Australia and run in the V8 Supercars once more under a Dick Johnson racing team revitalized by a brand-new partnership with Roger Penske, of all people. And Sunday night, it went official. The press release, as you mentioned earlier, came out. And he will be driving the number 17 Ford for what is being branded as DJR Team Penske. I'm just pulling a few quotes from the press release because I think they go a long way towards explaining the move. Penske, from the press release, said that he believes in building the business through racing and success on the track. And with their new business ventures in Australia, namely the trucking operations that he's opened up down there, basically it was a good idea to start co-branding and promoting their brand down there, and what better way to do it if you're in racing than to do it in V8 Supercars. So lots of money coming into that team, and more importantly, one of the native sons of the V8 Supercars and one of the most successful drivers still in the V8 Supercars era coming back to the sport. And it's made tons and tons of waves, and we could go on and on and on. I really don't know where to start because so many people have said so much stuff. I think my favorite quote might be from Jamie Whincup, who said that he was a bit of a rookie back when Marcus drove, and he remembered following him in 2003 when he was running, and it was a huge achievement for Jamie because Jamie was able to hang on the rear end of Marcus for 3 laps, and he was able to actually keep in touch with them. So I wonder, Jacob, how the tables would turn now that Marcus is back, and Jamie's really the one in the catbird seat, as Darrell Waltrip likes to say, whereas back then it was the other way around.
I'll take that, and I'll also say we're going to take a quick caution flag, our final one of the evening, but we can hit on a couple more nuts and bolts. When we come back, we'll wrap up the 8 Supercars, hit on a quick news and notes from the Oswego Speedway where Tom Baker spent, 24 hours or some such crazy number like that at the racetrack, and we'll make our picks for this coming weekend at Loudon. We wrap the madness right after this. You're listening to Speed77 Radio and Race Chaser Online.
all I wanted to do was just pick up a guitar and sing praise songs.
From IamSecond.com.
Well, when I got to 17, I was playing in after-hours bars, just in a bunch of trouble.
Grammy Award winner Michael W. Smith.
Smoking that first joint and feeling so guilty about it. From there, it was LSD, and your compass sort of just like disappeared. I knew where I belonged. I just couldn't get out. I was very depressed. I went on the floor and just began to shake. And I was just weeping. I was weeping. And I just began to cry out for God. 12:30 at night, on the linoleum floor of my kitchen, the God of the universe came and wept with me on that floor. I know where my hope lies. It's not being a rock star. I'm a son of the High King of the universe.
Watch Michael's story at IamSecond.com.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit StockCarSteel.com or SRI-Supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, James Pike around the round table to get ready to wrap this up for the evening, and going to finish up with V8 Supercars, talk a minute or two with Tom about about 18 hours of Oswego, and then make picks for Loudon. I think it sounds like a fun final segment. James, we were talking about Marcus Ambrose, DJR, Team Penske before we went to commercial. Obviously, everybody that follows the V8 Supercars, or did a decade ago when Marcus Ambrose was in it, has seen Marcos win 2 championships and basically become Jamie Whincup before Jamie Whincup was in V8 Supercars, more or less. The real question now is, and I know you've been following this, what do Jamie and some of the other guys have to say about this really quickly? I'm particularly interested in Jamie's comments because I heard bits and pieces of what he got to say over the weekend, but I'm sure there's a lot more that tells the story.
Well, there might be a lot more, but I went digging for it over the course of the afternoon, and I really didn't find much beyond what I mentioned before the break. Only other thing that I think is notable that he said is that he has a lot of respect for Marcus Ambrose, so it'll be exciting for me in a slightly typically vanilla Jamie Whincup fashion. So I guess we'll see when they get to the track. I think to summarize it in the words of V8 Supercar CEO James Warburton, game on for 2015.
I like that. And, you know, Warburton was absolutely right. This whole announcement throws everything wide open. And the thing that bothers me is now we have to wait a couple of weeks before we go to Bathurst. And we'll have you back on to talk more about it as the great race gets closer. But if I forced you to make an early prediction for what you think we're going to see in about 45 seconds, what do you like about Bathurst coming up?
If you really want me to start making predictions, early indications suggest a lot of Red Bull Racing Australia with a good helping of HRT. I think they'll be a lot stronger there than they were last year. Maybe in a best-case scenario up to the levels they were at in 2011 when Garth Tander won the race with them. And maybe a little bit of Volvo thrown in. They showed a lot of pace this weekend, and between McLaughlin and Monster, I think somebody will have something to say about the end of that race. But going to be fun.
It's going to be fun, and I think that's a new record. You just said Scotty McLaughlin and didn't go squee.
No, because we've got other stuff to get to.
Okay, fine. I'll give you that. Speaking of that other stuff, Tom, I've only alluded to it about 3 times now, but you have a story from this weekend kind of like I do. Mine's best saved for another time, but yours was interesting because it actually involved direct on-track action and what they're calling basically the 24 hours of Oswego, because the Race of Champions weekend was upon us, and we had a full program Saturday and a full program Sunday, and the Saturday program got rained out, so what do? We run 2 programs in one day.
Yeah, and it's a 7-division show with a 200-lapper, a couple of 100-lappers, a couple of 75-lappers, a 50-lapper. It's a lot of laps, a lot of cars, a lot of classes, even over 2 days. You condense it into one, and basically what they did is they didn't really condense the whole day and smash everything together. They basically just took the Saturday program and said, okay, when the Sunday program is done, we'll clear the pits, clear the grandstands, and bring in the other divisions that were supposed to race Saturday. We'll unload them, we'll practice them, we'll race. So you're right, it was 2 separate programs in one day. The problem is you still have drivers on the racetrack. They cause yellows, they crash things, they scatter foam all over the racetrack. And so it ended up being about an 18-hour show, and I don't want to blame anybody, and we can second guess all we want, but it was just a long day. It started, pits opened at 7:15 a.m. and then show ended after 1 a.m. on Monday morning. So there was a lot of good racing. Chuck Hosfeld picked up his 3rd win in the 64th annual Race of Champions Modified 200. Great run for Chuck. A lot of contenders there. Ryan Preece dropped by to race and walked off with a 3rd place finish. Of course, Money Matt Hirschman was probably the odds-on favorite. He just had a day he'd love to forget. All kinds of little things. Got wrecked one time and came out of the pits. The gas can still attached one time, had a pit road violation, had to do a stop and go, still got back to the front, and then finally got wrecked again toward the end of the race. But it was a good race, about 36 modifieds on hand. Great run. Stuart Friesen, first time ever in an asphalt modified. Stuart ended up fairly well, I think, in the top 12. But he certainly found that there was a big difference between how you drive a dirt car and how you drive an asphalt modified, but he did a good job for the first time, so that was kind of fun to watch. The super modifieds, of course, from Oswego's main class was on hand as well, and Otto Siddeley wrapped up his 7th track championship at Oswego. Dave Danzer picked up the win in the feature event. Otto Siddeley, of course, finished 2nd and won proverbially the war, winning the championship there. Andrew Schartner won the race, which was his 3rd small block Race of Champions win in a row, three-peat, and also won the track championship. That was his 1st in that division, dominated that event. Tony Hamberry, who finished 2nd in the Race of Champions Modified 200 to the aforementioned Chuck Hosfeld, picked up the win in the ROC Sportsman division, and that was a really good race. Good to see Tony get to victory lane with a Krzyzewski 21 in that division, because he missed out on the ROC win, so he made up for it later in the evening. And in the ROC Superstock division, it was Timmy Gurley leading flag to flag. That race was, and again, nothing against the Superstock guys. I love watching them run, but it's a long race. Lots of foam scattered around. They don't do a whole lot of passing. Timmy led from start to finish, and just totally annihilated the field in that one. And the NEMA midgets and NEMA lights were on hand as well, and put on really good shows, actually. Randy Cabral picked up the win in the NEMA midgets, and Scott Bigelow in the NEMA lights. A few of them had to go home after Saturday night just because a lot of them were New England-based, and they just needed to work on Monday morning. All in all, I mean, I have to give the track officials credit. It was just a cold night. Temperatures were in the low 40s by the end of it. These people stayed around all day long, did a great job. Everybody pulled together. The 64th running of the Race of Champions race, Jacob, that is the second longest consecutively run race in the country behind only the Indy 500. The Race of Champions steeped with prestige. Hopefully, a little bit better weather next year so they can put it back to the 2-day format where it belongs, and we'll all enjoy it a lot more. But it was a great time. The past 5/8 of a mile now shut down for the winter. It will reopen in the spring.
Yes, it will, and boy, just a lot of fun. And I'm proud of you. You knew the conclusion of that stat before I even had to ask you. I was just getting ready to say if you knew what number 1 was on the list of consecutively operated races. So look at you, Tom. You're turning into me for once. I like that.
Well, I got to do something to keep up with the young whippersnappers.
Fair enough. All right. Speaking of keeping up, you guys get to try and keep up with me this weekend since, oh, by the way, I'll say it again, I won fantasy for the week after Brad Keselowski went to victory lane. So let's dive into these performance picks to close up the show, shall we, gentlemen? Going to bring Kyle Magda back into this as well, but as the defending winner from last Monday's Madness, I feel it only appropriate to start off with my pick for the evening. So what I'm going to do is going to go something like this. I like Team Penske. I almost decided to pick Brad again, and I thought about it, and I'm like, there's another guy in that stable who actually hails from New England that I think is going to do pretty darn well this weekend. And, oh, by the way, his first Cup win was there. I'm taking the 22, Joey Logano and the Double Deuce going to victory lane, and both Team Penske cars going to punch their ticket to round number 2 of the chase with a win. James Pike, who do you like?
Oh, I really want to pick Keselowski, but I know that if I do, he won't actually win. So, Hamlin, why not? He's good on flat tracks. New Hampshire's flat enough. And he wasn't so bad at Chicago either, so.
He was better than I thought he was going to be at Chicago. I'll give Denny Hamlin a little bit of credit. I mean, he outran Jimmy Johnson. Good grief. So, all right. Tykester's got Hamlin. Tom, I turn to you. In your infinite wisdom, who do you like?
Well, it's Loudon. And, there are several, on those types of tracks, there are several ways you could go with this. But this is the chase, and I usually like, I'm the one that often goes out on the farthest limb, but you know what? In the chase, when it's all on the line and you already scored a point, so we're all playing catch-up now, you got to ride a horse till the leg breaks. And so you're picking Joey Logano. I'm picking Brad Keselowski. To win at Loudon, he's going to make it 3 in a row, 2 in a row in the chase. And I'm going to tell you what, if that ever happens, this chase is going to take on an entirely different tone.
You think? And, oh, by the way, Brad won at Loudon in July.
Yes, he did.
I had to get my calendar straight there, but, yeah, I'm actually a little bit nervous now. I thought about picking Brad, but I'm just like, I can't do it again. As much as I want to. Kyle Magda, fair enough. Kyle Magda, redeem us all. Who do you like? Your guy finished second.
That is true. I finished right behind you. And actually, I was at Loudon to see Brad Keselowski dominate the race. So definitely had a good call that day. But back to the picks. I've been kicking this pick around. You guys all have good picks. And this guy was running in the top 5 in July until he ran out of gas. And he has won at Loudon before. So actually, since 2006, he hasn't won there. So I'm going to take number 4 of Kevin Harvick. I think Harvick gets the job done and punches his ticket into the next round.
I'll buy that. He won at Phoenix to start the season. Harv's good on flat tracks. I'll take that pick. So I think everybody picked a chaser, though. Tom, I'm going to get the final thought of this show from you before I send us home. If you like a dark horse, because it seems like we had a few of those, try to jump up and spoil the party. If there's going to be a non-chaser spoil the party on Sunday, who is it?
Oh, goodness. Well, here again, I think you look at the 42 card and you say, you know what? he's going to come close until he finally breaks through and wins one. But I also like his teammate, Jamie McMurray, as a real possibility here. But I think Kyle Larson's the dark horse. I mean, he's due to win one at any point. It wouldn't surprise me if it happens before the end of this chase.
All right, I'll buy that and throw my hat into the ring with a dark horse pick of a multi-time Loudon winner, Clint Boyer. That's my dark horse, and I'll tell you, though, if you're in the field, you got a shot to win it. So let's head home with that, gentlemen, shall we? Until Thursday night for the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports show. This has been an edition of Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. We appreciate all the fans that tuned in tonight, and appreciate Nick Lascola coming on and spending a few minutes with us. And for all of us on the air and behind the scenes tonight, including my cohort in crime, Tom Baker, James Pike, Kyle Magda, Joel Sebastianelli, Steve Ovens, and the rest of our staff at RaceChaserOnline.com. I'm Jacob Seelman. Race fans, keep it off the wall until we meet again. We'll see you back on the air Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, have a good night and a safe upcoming racing weekend. Good night, everybody.